Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into self-discipline and mental toughness.
Ooh, good topic.
We'll be exploring the ideas in Daily Self-Discipline, a book by Martin Meadows. And get ready, we're going to uncover some pretty unexpected strategies.
Intriguing.
I think we've all heard those motivational speeches about willpower, right? But this deep dive is about more than just pep talks. It's about rewiring those deep-seated habits and getting that mindset that'll really help us achieve our goals.
Yeah, I think Meadows makes a good point when he says self-discipline is not like something you're born with. It's a skill. You learn it.
Right, like practicing, yeah.
And what I found really interesting is he focuses on the tough times. You know, those moments when you're most likely to, give up.
Oh, absolutely, when those cravings hit. Yeah.
Exactly. He doesn't dwell on those times when things are easy.
Yeah.
He dives right into those difficult moments.
Which, let's be honest, are the most relatable.
For sure.
So he starts by laying out two core principles. Commitment, which is sticking to your plan, and belief, actually believing that the plan will work. But he doesn't stop there. He tells this really cool story about a king who's searching for, this magic ring.
Oh, yeah. To lift his spirits whenever he's feeling down.
Exactly. And the wise men, they give him this ring, and it's got an inscription that says, "This too shall pass."
Classic story.
It's so simple, but it's such a powerful reminder, you know?
Yeah, nothing lasts forever.
Especially the tough stuff. Like when you're feeling overwhelmed or tempted to give up on your goals, remembering that phrase can really help you keep things in perspective. It's like a mental anchor.
Definitely.
Now, Meadows argues that believing in your plan is actually easier when you see that it's worked for others. So, imagine a weight loss plan that's helped thousands of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly your doubt decreases and you feel more confident.
Oh, absolutely. Because you see it's possible.
Right.
It makes you feel like you can do it too.
Exactly. And then Meadows throws in this unexpected connection between self-discipline and physical excellence.
Interesting.
He talks about professional athletes.
Makes sense.
It's not just talent. It's years of rigorous training, pushing themselves to the limit. They embody self-discipline.
Right. They have that dedication.
And he uses that example to highlight the importance of consistent physical activity, something that, a lot of us struggle with.
Yeah, for sure.
In fact, the book mentions a pretty startling statistic. Nearly 35% of adults in the U.S. are obese.
Wow.
And he doesn't shy away from connecting that to, a lack of self-discipline.
It's interesting because he talks about these things called keystone habits.
Keystone habits, right. I've heard that term, but remind me how they work.
Okay, so think of it like this.
Mm-hmm.
Regular exercise can lead to improvements in other areas of your life.
Okay.
Studies show that people who exercise regularly also tend to eat better.
Oh, interesting.
They're less likely to smoke or drink excessively. It's almost like one positive habit creates this domino effect.
So it's not just about the physical benefits, it's about building that mental discipline.
Exactly. And Meadows really emphasizes finding activities you truly enjoy. He even talks about a study where people who did take one stuck with it longer than those in other fitness programs simply because they found it enjoyable.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's about making it sustainable, right? If you don't like what you're doing, you're not going to stick with it.
Makes total sense.
Now, we all know that people quit fitness programs all the time, even with the best intentions. Meadows digs into why that happens. He identifies 5 main reasons, and surprisingly, lack of time. While it's a common excuse, it's not usually the real culprit.
That makes you think.
I know, I'm guilty of using that excuse myself. So, if it's not about time, what is it about?
Well, he argues that deep down, we make time for what we truly value.
Right.
So if our health isn't high on that list, we'll always find a reason to put it off.
Interesting.
He also gets into the psychology of motivation, talking about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation.
Right. Those are important distinctions.
So intrinsic motivation is like when you enjoy the activity itself.
Yeah.
You find it fun and rewarding.
Yeah, like dancing just because you love to dance.
Exactly. While extrinsic motivation is more about external rewards or pressures, like exercising just to lose weight for a wedding.
Right, so you're not doing it for the joy of it, but for a specific outcome. And he says that intrinsic motivation is key for sticking with it long term.
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that really stood out to me was his suggestion to find a workout buddy, someone who's slightly better than you.
Oh, yeah, I like that idea.
He calls this the Kohler effect. It's this phenomenon where people work harder in groups, especially when they have someone to measure themselves against.
A little friendly competition.
Right. Now, even with a workout buddy and the best intentions, we all have those days when we just don't feel like exercising.
Oh yeah, those days are the worst.
How does Meadows deal with that?
He argues that pushing through those days when you least feel like it builds the most mental toughness.
Interesting. So those are actually the most valuable workouts, in a way.
In terms of building self-discipline, yes. But he's not saying you should push yourself to the point of burnout.
Right, right.
Rest and strategic breaks are also important. He even mentions a Japanese study where they found that taking 3 weeks off from training didn't hinder progress.
Wow, that's reassuring.
Yeah, sometimes you need a break to come back stronger.
Definitely. And Meadows doesn't just stop at exercise, right?
Nope, he tackles healthy eating habits too.
Another tough one. So what's his take on that?
Well, he doesn't mince words. He states pretty plainly that obesity is usually a result of a lack of self-discipline, not just medical conditions.
Makes you think.
He even quotes Peter Sage, who said, "If you don't make time for health, you'll have to make time for illness."
Wow, powerful quote.
Right. It's a reminder that we have to prioritize our well-being.
And it's not just about preaching, right?
No. Meadows actually shares his personal experience with being overweight and how he turned things around by finding enjoyment in healthy eating.
So he's walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And then he dives into a topic that many of us struggle with, cravings.
Uh-oh, the dreaded cravings.
Yeah, he connects resisting food cravings to resisting the urge to give up on goals in general, arguing it's the same mental muscle at work.
So if you can resist that extra slice of cake, you're also building the discipline to stick with a writing project or, finishing that online course you signed up for.
That's the idea. And he brings back a classic psychology experiment, the Stanford marshmallow test.
Oh, yeah. The one with the kids and the marshmallows.
Exactly. The kids who could delay gratification and wait for 2 marshmallows later, they often use distraction techniques.
Interesting.
So Meadows applies that to adults. He suggests removing temptations from sight, or like waiting 15 minutes to see if the craving subsides.
Just to break that automatic response.
Right. And you can also try focusing on something else entirely.
Makes sense. Take your mind off of it.
He also talks about the hot-cold empathy gap, this idea that we underestimate the power of cravings when we're not in the grips of them.
So like when you're full and you think, oh, I could easily resist dessert, but then later when you're hungry.
Exactly. So he encourages us to really think about the negative consequences of giving in.
To remind ourselves that those moments of indulgence are often followed by regret.
Right, like that feeling after you've eaten a whole bag of chips.
Oh, yeah, the guilt and the bloating.
Now, this next part surprised me.
Oh, what's that?
He actually talks about making dieting sustainable.
Sustainable? I thought it was all about willpower and restriction.
Well, Meadows argues that hardcore restriction often backfires.
Yeah, I can see how that could happen. You deprive yourself for so long and then you just binge.
Exactly. And he shares his own strategy for staying on track. A weekly cheat day.
Wait, cheat days are allowed?
He argues that they can actually be beneficial.
Really? I always thought they were a slippery slope to falling off the wagon completely.
Well, he points out that cheat meals can actually boost your metabolism and increase your motivation.
Wow, that's interesting.
And psychologically, those scheduled breaks help you avoid feeling guilty. That I already messed up, might as well give up, spiral.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So a planned indulgence can actually be helpful.
Right. But it's not just about cheat days.
Okay.
Meadows really stresses the importance of finding healthy food substitutes that you actually enjoy.
So no bland salads and steamed veggies.
Nope. He suggests experimenting with spices and herbs to make healthy food more flavorful, finding healthier versions of your favorite dishes, embracing things like fruits, berries, even dark chocolate.
So making it delicious, not a punishment.
Exactly. And he mentions a more unconventional approach, intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting, that sounds pretty intense.
It can be, but it's been shown to be effective for weight loss and, building discipline. He actually shares his personal experience with it and how it can change your relationship with food, making you less afraid of feeling hungry.
Maybe something to look into. Now, Meadows also talks about the classic struggle of waking up early.
Or at least having a consistent sleep schedule.
Right, which can be tough. So what's his advice on that?
Well, he acknowledges that not everyone is naturally an early bird. He even says that some of us are actually wired to be more productive later in the day.
That's a relief to hear. I've always felt pressured to be a morning person, but it just doesn't feel natural.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
So is he advocating for going cold turkey, just setting the alarm for 5 a.m. and forcing yourself up?
Well, he offers two approaches, cold turkey or gradually adjusting your wake-up time. And of course, he addresses the snooze button.
Oh, the snooze button, my biggest enemy. What's his solution?
He suggests raising the stakes, like scheduling an early morning appointment or making a bet with a friend, something that makes it harder to choose the easy option.
I like that.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need a little external motivation to get yourself going. Now, this is where the book gets really interesting.
Oh.
He actually suggests intentionally seeking out discomfort.
Intentionally seeking out discomfort. That seems counterintuitive.
I know, right? But he makes a good case for it.
Okay, I'm listening.
He argues that throughout history, overcoming adversity has made humans stronger and more adaptable. He even quotes Stoic philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, who they championed embracing discomfort.
So instead of avoiding challenges, we should actively seek them out. How do we do that in practice?
He offers a variety of exercises,
Okay.
starting with one that might make you shiver.
Cold showers.
Cold showers. Brr, that doesn't sound very pleasant.
He suggests starting with 5 minutes and gradually getting used to the cold.
5 minutes? I don't know if I could do that.
He explains how the initial shock eventually gives way to adaptation, and that this process can actually build mental toughness.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that could work. And if cold showers are too extreme, he suggests a milder alternative, going out slightly underdressed for the weather.
So it's about finding ways to gently nudge yourself out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. He also recommends temporarily giving up things that make you comfortable.
Like what?
Your smartphone, coffee, even your bed for a night.
Wow, that's taking it to another level.
He argues that it helps you appreciate those things more and also builds resilience.
Interesting. So by experiencing life without those comforts, even for a short period, you gain a new perspective.
Exactly. Now get ready for this one. He suggests rejection therapy.
Rejection therapy. What is that?
He points out that most people are terrified of rejection and that fear can be paralyzing. So he suggests intentionally putting yourself in situations where you might be rejected.
So you purposely seek out rejection. That sounds scary.
I know, right? But the idea is to desensitize yourself and build confidence.
So like what kind of situations?
He gives examples like working in sales, flirting with strangers, or even haggling for a lower price.
I see. You're repeatedly facing those situations so that they become less intimidating.
Exactly. He even mentions that there's a rejection therapy game online that you can play.
Wow. Maybe I'll check that out.
Now, he also talks about something called failure therapy.
Failure therapy. That sounds a bit ominous.
Well, he quotes Yogi Berra, who said, "Losing is a learning experience. It's about intentionally setting difficult goals where failure is a possibility."
Okay, but why would you want to set yourself up for failure?
The key is to use those experiences to learn and grow. He even connects it to what he calls the restraint bias, which is that tendency we all have to overestimate our self-control.
So we think we're stronger than we actually are.
Exactly. And by embracing the possibility of failure, we're being more realistic about our limitations.
Interesting.
And finally, he argues that tackling the toughest tasks first is another crucial habit for building self-discipline.
Ah, so instead of procrastinating on the hard stuff.
Right. We often put off those difficult tasks, choosing to do the easier things first for a quick sense of accomplishment.
Oh, I am so guilty of that. But why is it so important to tackle those hard things first?
Well, Meadows argues that delaying only makes the resistance stronger.
Like avoiding something just makes it seem scarier.
Exactly. And he applies the same principle to learning. He suggests picking up a challenging skill, like learning a new language.
Learning a new language, that sounds intimidating. Why that specifically?
Well, he argues it's not just about acquiring a new skill, it's about understanding your learning patterns, learning to overcome discouragement, and building your tolerance for frustration. It's like a crash course in self-discipline.
Okay, I can see that.
He actually suggests a whole menu of potentially challenging activities.
Oh, like what? Give me some examples.
Mastering a difficult sport, developing patience through things like cooking or gardening.
Interesting.
Even, get this, mastering honesty as a self-discipline exercise.
Mastering honesty. How does that work?
He argues that even small lies can create stress and damage relationships. It's about aligning your actions with your values, even when it's uncomfortable.
Makes sense. It takes discipline to be truthful, especially when it's easier to just tell a little white lie.
Exactly. He also tackles overcoming shyness, suggesting things like exposure therapy to build confidence.
So putting yourself in situations that trigger those feelings of awkwardness.
Right. like talking to strangers, practicing eye contact, maybe even public speaking.
It's about facing those fears head on.
Exactly. Now, up to this point, we've been talking about outward actions, but Meadows argues that outer chaos often reflects inner chaos.
Ah, I like that. So if your mind is a mess, your life will be a mess.
Right. So how does he suggest we tackle this inner world?
Well, he talks about this habit he calls sharpening awareness with quiet repose. It's basically about mastering your mind through practices like meditation.
Oh, yeah, meditation. I've tried it, but to be honest, I really struggle to sit still and, like, clear my mind. Is that the only option he gives?
No, not at all. He recognizes that traditional meditation, is not for everyone. So he suggests alternatives, like mindful music listening, yoga, or even Tai Chi.
Okay, so there are some options.
Yeah. He even mentions walking meditation. Oh, and journaling. And gratitude meditation. That's a good one.
That's great. It's not like a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly.
But how does meditation, in any form, actually help you build self-discipline?
Well, he quotes Peter Drucker, who said, "What gets measured gets managed." And Meadows applies that to thoughts. So basically, by being aware of our thoughts, we gain the power to, manage them.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you even become aware of your thoughts? They're just, they're.
Right. But he emphasizes that we are not our thoughts.
Oh, I see.
We can choose which ones to engage with and which ones to just let go of.
So it's about, having that separation. You're not your thoughts, you're observing them.
Exactly.
Now, there's this exercise he mentions, embracing the tunnel vision.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. It's about practicing mindfulness throughout the day.
Okay.
He uses the example of, observing a leaf, really focusing on it, engaging all your senses to, experience it in that moment.
I see. So it's about slowing down and really paying attention to the present experience.
Right, because in our busy lives, we're constantly bombarded with distractions.
Yeah, for sure.
So learning to focus on the present moment, it's a really valuable skill.
But how do we bridge that gap between, our present actions and those future aspirations? I know Meadows talks about having a conversation with your future self.
Yes, that's a really powerful technique. He's tapping into this concept called temporal discounting. Basically, it's our tendency to prioritize immediate rewards over bigger future ones.
Right, like choosing an extra hour of sleep instead of going for that run, even though you know it's good for you in the long term.
Exactly. And so, to counter that, he suggests writing a letter from your future self.
Oh, a letter?
Yeah, from the perspective of both succeeding at your goal and also failing.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's like a reality check from the future,
I like that.
It helps you really see the potential outcomes of your choices.
Now, speaking of choices, he also talks about the importance of figuring out your core values.
Right.
And your priorities.
Yes. He calls it building your compass.
Right, the compass.
It's about setting some clear rules and habits that, support those values to keep you on track. Because if your actions and your values are out of alignment, well, that can lead to a lack of self-discipline.
It's like you're fighting against yourself.
Exactly.
Now, he acknowledges that sometimes we push too hard, which can lead to burnout, right?
Oh, absolutely. He shares a personal story about overdoing it at the gym and ending up exhausted and injured. It's a good reminder that self-discipline isn't about pushing yourself to the limit all the time.
It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. It's about being kind to yourself, not just constantly pushing.
So how do you find that balance?
Well, he really emphasizes gradual progress,
Yeah.
prioritizing the long term over those short-term extremes. He encourages scheduling breaks and incorporating cheat days or, rest periods into your routine.
It's not about punishment.
Nope. It's about making it enjoyable.
Okay. So slow and steady wins the race. But what about staying motivated during those slower periods? I sometimes feel like I need that, constant push.
Well, he makes the argument that actually practicing self-discipline and mental toughness can lead to a more positive mindset.
Okay.
And that positive mindset can then reinforce your motivation.
So it's like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. He also really highlights the power of gratitude.
Yeah.
Being grateful for what you have.
Gratitude.
It helps you overcome setbacks, and it can provide resilience when willpower alone just isn't enough.
Powerful stuff. But what about those inevitable moments of negativity? We all experience those. How do you deal with setbacks and disappointment?
Well, Meadows talks about the negativity bias.
Okay.
It's basically our tendency to focus more on negative events than positive ones. Like, if you lose 10 pounds but then gain one back, you fixate on that 1 pound instead of celebrating the 9 you lost.
Oh, yeah, that's so relatable.
It's easy to get caught in that trap. So to combat that, he suggests practicing cognitive reappraisal.
Cognitive reappraisal, what is that?
It's about reinterpreting negative events to find, the positive meaning.
Okay.
So, for example, if you get injured and can't exercise, instead of viewing that as a major setback, you could see it as an opportunity to focus on, something else, like nutrition or meditation.
Ah, so turning those lemons into lemonade.
Exactly. But then there's also that inner critic, right? That voice that says, you're not good enough or you're going to fail.
Oh, yeah. I know that voice all too well. How do you quiet that down?
Well, Meadows emphasizes the importance of self-compassion.
Self-compassion. Okay.
He quotes Olivia Fox-Cabane, who said, the higher one's level of self-compassion, the lower one's level of self-pity. So it's about being kind to yourself, just like you would treat a good friend.
Right, instead of beating yourself up for every mistake.
Exactly. And he suggests some practical tips, like creating a list of mood boosters, things that bring you joy and help you recharge.
Ah, I like that.
And practicing power poses.
Power poses, like standing with your hands on your hips, chest out.
Exactly. Studies have shown that even holding those poses for a short time can actually increase feelings of confidence and power.
Interesting.
He also suggests trying to visualize yourself through the eyes of someone who loves you, someone who sees your strengths and accepts your imperfections.
So countering those negative thoughts with positive affirmations and visualizations.
Right. And it's also important to remember that negative self-talk, it can also come from just being physically tired.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So taking care of your basic needs, it's really important. Getting enough sleep, eating well, getting some sunlight, and incorporating some quiet time into your day.
It's all connected.
It is. Your physical well-being definitely affects your mental and emotional state.
Now, you mentioned before that Meadows talks about developing a growth mindset. Can you explain what that is?
Sure. So he contrasts it with a fixed mindset, which is the belief that our abilities are predetermined, fixed.
Okay.
But a growth mindset is the belief that our abilities can be developed through effort and learning.
Ah, I see. So instead of seeing challenges as threats, you see them as opportunities to grow.
Exactly. It's about embracing that learning process, even when it's tough.
And he really emphasizes persistence, right?
Right.
It's not about being perfect.
Right. It's about getting back up every time you fall down, learning from those mistakes,
Yeah.
and adjusting your approach as needed.
Okay, so it's that commitment to showing up and doing the work day after day, even when you don't feel like it.
And he reminds us that self-discipline, it doesn't have to be a joyless grind.
Right. Find those things that you enjoy.
Exactly. It's about finding those activities that challenge you, but also, bring you a sense of fulfillment.
That sweet spot where challenge meets enjoyment.
Yes.
So it's not about deprivation and punishment.
Nope. It's about making those choices that align with your values and your goals, even when they take some effort, and enjoying the journey along the way.
He really emphasizes that self-discipline is an ongoing process, not a destination.
Right. It's something you keep working on and refining throughout your life.
It's like building a muscle, right?
Exactly. The more you use it, the stronger it gets,
Yeah.
and the easier it becomes to face those challenges and achieve your goals.
It's about that constant evolution, the commitment to learning and growing, and that belief in our ability to really become the best versions of ourselves. Now, in addition to all these structured habits and exercises, Meadows gives us a lot of practical tips and strategies in the book. It's like he's giving us this mental toolbox filled with different strategies for navigating life.
And he really encourages that,
Yeah.
finding what works for you.
Right. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Exactly.
But one thing he repeatedly stresses is the importance of self-awareness.
Oh, absolutely. Know thyself, right?
It's about understanding your thoughts, your emotions, even your behaviors.
Yeah.
And Meadows actually gives specific exercises for, improving that awareness.
Yeah, like embracing the tunnel vision, that one we talked about, focusing on one thing, to become more present.
Mm-hmm.
And he also encourages us to really think about our core values.
That personal compass idea, making sure your actions and values are aligned.
Exactly. Because if those are out of whack, it can create, a lot of internal conflict.
Makes self-discipline a lot harder.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like trying to drive a car with one foot on the gas and the other on the brake.
Yeah.
You're not going to get very far.
Great analogy. He also talks about understanding our motivations.
Yeah.
And what really drives us.
Yeah, yeah. He makes that distinction between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation.
Right, right.
Intrinsic is when you do something simply because you enjoy it. You find it fun and rewarding.
Like, I love to hike, so I hike.
Exactly.
Mm.
Whereas extrinsic motivation is more about external rewards or pressure. So, like maybe you're exercising just to lose weight for an event.
Right, so the motivation is coming from outside, not from within.
Exactly. And Meadows actually suggests a really cool exercise for connecting with your motivations. Writing a letter to your future self.
Oh, a letter. That's interesting.
Yeah. Imagine yourself 5 years from now. Write one version where you achieve your goal and another where you didn't.
Wow, that's powerful.
Really puts things into perspective.
Yeah, it's like a glimpse into those potential outcomes. He also talks about something called the restraint bias, which I think a lot of us fall into.
Oh, yeah. Thinking we have more self-control than we actually do.
Like, oh, yeah, I can easily resist that bag of chips. And then,
And then the whole bag is gone.
Exactly. So what's the solution?
Well, he suggests a technique called pre-commitment. It's basically about making decisions ahead of time when your willpower is strong, to make it harder to give in later.
So like packing a healthy lunch so you're not tempted by fast food.
Exactly. Or maybe setting a timer to limit your social media use.
Putting those safeguards in place. I like it. Now, all this talk about self-discipline, it can feel, I don't know, kind of overwhelming. But Meadows reminds us that it's not about being perfect, it's about progress, right?
Absolutely. It's those small wins, those moments when you choose that harder but better option. That's what really builds momentum over time.
And as you mentioned earlier, celebrating those wins.
Yes. It's so important. Acknowledge your efforts and give yourself credit. Be kind to yourself. It's not about constantly pushing and striving.
Self-compassion is so key, treating ourselves with the same kindness we'd offer to, like a good friend.
Exactly. And remember, self-discipline is a journey, not a destination. It's something we keep working on throughout our lives.
So as you reflect on everything we've discussed today, what insights or strategies really resonated with you? What's one area you want to focus on improving?
And what's one small step you can take right now, today, to start building that self-discipline muscle? Remember, it's about progress, not perfection.
Keep diving, keep exploring, and keep striving to be the best version of yourself. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.